good guy, man. You deserve to feel good in here.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so you guys just do what you gotta do to take care of yourself.
Exactly.
You know.
Just try to get one step at a time so I can start being more active in my kids' lives and all that.
Yeah.
But we're talking about community healing, and it's just, why don't we educate people? Why don't we educate the police? You know, in Miami, we have a CIT program, which stands for Crisis Intervention Team, where, you know, we have over 7,500 officers trained in Miami-Dade County that receive a 40-hour class on crisis intervention, so they can de-escalate people and get them to the hospital instead of, you know, escalating them and having them cause crime and chaos. And, you know, we've seen police injuries go down. We've seen injuries to people with serious mental illness go down. And we've seen out of, you know, like, I have to give you the exact numbers and I can get it to you, but there was like something like 95,000 calls over the last 6 or 8 years between Miami-Dade County and City of Miami, 2 precincts out of 36 precincts in Miami. And there was like 152 arrests out of like close to 100,000 calls. So, you know, yeah.
Fascinating. This is fascinating.
And, you know, when the police see somebody with lived experience share and they put a human face to it, you know, it changes things, you know. It changes things when people, when paramedics, when mental health providers, when primary care doctors are educated about mental illness, and there's not so much stigma to say, this is where the crazy guy's coming in, like, brace yourself, you know.
Yeah. I've noticed, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to dial it back a little bit, I feel like we touched a lot of, you explained a lot about how the cycle kind of keeps cycling when you have mental health and you're in the system. But why is it, in your opinion, that those with mental illness are so much more likely to even start the cycle to begin with? Like,
go ahead. So.
Yeah, like the first arrest. Why?
Well, that's a great question. But primarily because, you know, there is so much stigma that when you see, you know, somebody that's homeless or acting different, people get upset and the police are called. And, you know, with somebody that is in an acute state of crisis can overreact when an authoritative figure or somebody tells them what to do and something happens. And a lot of these crimes that we see are crimes of mental health and of poverty, and see the small misdemeanor charges. Honestly, most of these people with serious mental health issues, you'll see trespassing, loitering, open container, petty theft of probably $20 or less. I see a lot of things like they took a bag of chips, they took headphones from Macy's. I mean, like things that, you know, like we talk about somebody of privilege, that if you had the right mind to speak to somebody, you would be able to pay them back and not even have to deal with any of this or have a private attorney, you know?
Right. No, that makes sense.
Would you say that how do I put this? How do you feel about the de-escalation part that you were talking about? Because that's been such a big topic of discussion in the past few months with the civil disobedience and whatever you want to call it out there since the George Floyd incident. The idea that the police needs to learn how to de-escalate. How would you characterize this 40-hour class that you're talking about that the police is it Miami-Dade County?
Correct.
The Miami-Dade County police have to go through this 40-hour class. How much would you say that has helped? Is that where you tied that into the calls that went down?
Yes, and I could provide those statistics for you. But basically, you know, when this training was introduced in Miami 20 years ago, there was still cops from the 80s, from the 70s and 80s that were here in Miami. And, you know, Robert, you grew up during that time, and it was a different time for
vicious,
right? Vicious. All around. So there was a real different perspective on drugs and mental illness and hard on crime, tough on crime the Reagan administration, things like that. And there was a lot of violence, and there was a lot of serious problems, you know. So when they brought in the CIT 20 years ago, the CIT instructor actually used to leave in tears because these cops used to just like laugh at her, like, I don't want to hear this touchy-feely stuff. But what we've seen, you know, is a different generation of police, and those police have retired, and that their kids and the younger generation has more compassion and has more of a realistic view of people they grew up with, and to see them struggle with drugs and alcohol because drugs is such a, you know, a pandemic, is that the right word?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You could call it a pandemic, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, it's just everywhere now. So people have, you know, real life experience of it, and I think there is a little less stigma for the new generation to deal with that, and that, you know, I think everybody would agree, even great cops would agree, that people need more training when it comes to certain topics. And you know, I've had police tell me, like, listen, I'm not a mental health care provider. And it just goes to the sense that, you know, in different cities across the country, that there's mental health clinicians going out with police to evaluate people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you know that's really
amazing.
whose hands this should be in, is treatment providers. I
Yeah.
often say that I wish, you know, I didn't have a job. You know, what if the court didn't have to catch these people? What if they didn't have to be arrested? What if they could just mainstream get help right off the street, and there'd be funding for treatment centers across the
I have a question
country?
to that. Let's in a situation where, let's say, there's a mental health provider with a practitioner, if that's the right word, with the cop to come address the situation. Let's say it's disorderly conduct, right? And does the practitioner realizes this person does not have mental illness? Does that kind of create a bit of like a privilege in a sort of sense for those who do have mental illness because they're getting away with it? Does that make sense?
Well, we have to look down to the root cause of the problem, though, first. That if anybody, even if the mental health issue is a passing symptom and they're not severely mentally ill, we know that 1 in 5 people across a lifetime can experience a mental health issues. Maybe somebody's wife just divorced them. Maybe they got drunk. Maybe something happened. And we got to look at that instead of a privilege point, that shouldn't there be another avenue for somebody that's in an already over incarcerated justice system where people are proven not to get better, but to get worse. And in fact, the more instances you have of incarceration, the harder it is to get a job, the harder it is to pay your rent, support your family, and to reintegrate into and to reintegrate into the society. Because, you know, it's like, you know, I'm not going to speak negative or positive for people that owe child support, but it's like, you know, if somebody owes money, why would we lock them up when they're trying to work to feed the family, you know? Right. And I'm not condoning that, you know, at all, but it's just an instance, you know.
No, but it's a very logical way to think that through. And I think your point about education in general is a very valid point. I know that I saw another documentary a couple of years back, and it was before you and I had met, Justin, and they were showing, I don't know if it was Virginia, I know it was in the South. Where is it in the South that they're having tremendous problems with opiate addiction? There's a particular state that's got it. Is it
New
Virginia?
Jersey has a huge opiate addiction problem right
This
now.
is in the South. It's in the deep South, like Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas. I don't remember which one it was. Whatever one of those states. The kids started on opiates and then transferred over to other drugs, right? And the police were called out, but the police officers had an intervention specialist in the car with them. So if the call went out that this was a person that was using crack on the street, or it was a person that was whatever, insert here, they would send that person out to have the conversation with them to try to put them into a detox program or try to put them into, some sort of an assistance program before, like diversion. They would divert them out. And it was amazing to see that.
Honestly, this whole idea like completely blows my mind. Like it's just so important. It makes such a difference if this was implemented. I really like the way you put it. It's almost like developing a level of compassion and treating people as humans and understanding the situation as a whole before the problem even escalates. This is awesome.
Yes, and I bumped into Justin on airplanes traveling, me going in one direction for business and he's going in another direction. And I know that you've spoken, Justin, in different places about this program. Can you talk about a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I do a lot of consulting work too. Right now, it's definitely via computer, but I've traveled a good part of the country sharing my recovery story, sharing what this program does for people here in Miami-Dade County and the importance of treating people with severe mental health issues as regular people and reducing that stigma. I worked with a grant in 2011 through SAMHSA, which is the state Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, which is basically mental health for the federal government, and I've done a lot of consulting for them, but they had this one grant for trauma-informed care, and we would provide trauma-informed care trainings across the country, and we would have different perspectives come in, and we would train from facilities basically on the biology of trauma and the physical effects it has on the body. And then you would come in as a peer perspective as somebody that's experienced it like me, and then share that, and they would put it all together, and that could be a whole nother show and a whole nother topic, but I really would love you guys to talk about. So the ACEs study stands for Adverse Childhood Effect Study, and there's a 10 scale question that some of the questions are like, did you suffer from physical or sexual abuse as a child? Was there a parent that was incarcerated? Were your parents divorced? Did somebody use drugs or alcohol in your family? And the higher you rank on this test shows the amount of trauma that you had. And, the higher you rate, the, lesser quality of life you have, and you're lesser of a life expectancy. There was a study that started in San Diego, and I can get you some more information on that. But, so as far as the consulting goes, what we try to talk about nationally, locally, and to anybody that'll listen is that nobody seems to care until this affects somebody that they're close to.
Yep.
Unless they know somebody with a serious mental health or a drug problem. And, it's good to see people and communities want to be on board and want to do the right thing. And, politicians will agree that even if they don't want to do the right thing, it saves people money. It saves people money. It's cheaper to treat somebody, preventive wise than after they've been incarcerated and after they're in and out of the hospital all the time. And it makes more sense and it's more humane.
But not for-profit prisons.
No, but as far as we did a study in 2013 in Miami-Dade County. We wanted to see who the highest utilizers were in the community. That means the people that were in the hospital the most, in jail the most, in crisis, and we looked at this list, right? And we expected, how many people would you expect to be the highest utilizers in Miami-Dade County? Just an average number.
Utilizers of drugs?
Of the mental health system, of the criminal justice system.
People with mental health issues?
Yeah, how many do you think?
Like a percentage?
Like how many do you think?
I'd probably say like 60%.
Yeah, it wasn't that many people. It was like I forget the number now. I can't but it was like 70 people or something that they spent, over $11 million in the system. It was something crazy that it wasn't a large percentage. It was just a few people that we're cycling in and out all the time, you know?